If I could only choose just 2 exercises to train my back, what would they be? In this video, I'm going to share with you what those exercises are, and I'll teach you why I think just about everybody should be incorporating them in some shape or form into their workouts, and I'll take you into the gym to show you how to properly set them up and perform these exercises to get as much as you can out of these exercises. But before we get there, I'm curious, what are your top 2 exercises for back? Drop me a comment below and let me know. If you could only choose just 2 exercises for back training, what would they be? I'm going to give you maybe about 10 seconds to do that whilst I take a sip of my tea. Okay, so let's get stuck into it. Exercise numero 1 is the lat pull down, which probably doesn't come as a big surprise to you, as I'm sure most of you would be doing a lat pull down on your back day. However, I think for many of you, the technique that I use for a lat pull down is going to be very different to what you would typically do or see in the gym. Now, the reason for this isn't because I'm trying to be different for social media or anything like that. It's for 2 very specific reasons and very specific drawbacks to a typical lat pull down you would see performed in the gym. So I'm actually going to hijack this 2 best back builder video a little bit and talk about 2 reasons why lat pull downs aren't actually that great for lats. Reason number 1 is because there isn't much stability. The only thing holding you in position on a typical lat pull down is your legs being anchored into position. I mean, sure, it's sufficient, but with your torso being suspended in midair like this, you have to expend a lot of effort and energy to keep yourself in a good position to work your back muscles without using any momentum, which ultimately compromises how hard you can push on the exercise. I mean, sure, you can see here I'm not really having a hard time keeping myself in position, but there's also next to no weight on the machine, and definitely not nearly enough to create anything significant from a muscle building perspective. And of course, if you don't worry about keeping yourself in a good position whatsoever and wind up using a lot of momentum to move the weight, you'll shift the tension of the exercise away from your lats and onto other regions, like maybe your shoulders, your biceps, your neck, or just about every other muscle group apart from your back, and specifically your lats. Now, reason number 2 is the alignment of the cable on the exercise is actually not very latty whatsoever. In fact, the way that most people do a lat pull down isn't actually setting up the muscle fibers of the lats to be in a good position to be contracting, and instead puts the muscles of the upper back into a much better position overall. You can see it with the way that the line of the cable drives directly through the upper back region, whilst the lat fibers don't really get taken through a complete range of motion. Now, is this inherently bad? Not really, but it does highlight a lot as to why people tend to have a hard time getting complete development to their back, and what they may complain about as having like shallow lats or not much back thickness or anything like that. It's really just a factor of not taking the muscle through its full range of motion under significant amounts of tension. Because what tends to happen is, due to A, the lack of stability, and B, this alignment, the moment that the exercise starts to get hard, your body will do whatever it can to make this even less stimulation for your lats, and again, shift things to your shoulders, your biceps, your neck, or anywhere else in the body. So here's what I like to do to overcome these 2 issues, and what I refer to when I talk about lat pull downs. I use an incline bench anchored up behind a lat pull down machine, but this could also be set up at any adjustable cable station depending on whatever you have available. This is a variation that I got from my friend Kasim Hansen, and it has quickly become my absolute favorite for training the lats and has made a huge difference to my development over the past maybe 12 to 18 months. The incline bench positioning resolves both of these issues and instantly creates a much more potent exercise for stimulating your lats. First of all, it provides you with something to brace your body up against. This is really important for when you're pushing close to those failure points, which is so important for creating any kind of muscle building stimulus in the body. Whereas on a typical lat pull down, the second you start to struggle, you'll be tempted to cheat. It's next to impossible to mess this kind of lat pull down up instead. You still can, but we'll come back on what to do about that in a moment. Secondly, you can see clearly how the bench positioning puts the lat fibers into near perfect alignment against the line of the cable, which means that the lats are working very hard through the entire range of motion. This is probably the most important thing to consider with any exercise and any muscle group. How well does it allow the resistance, in this case the cable, to align with the direction of the fibers of the target muscle? And this exercise does it nearly perfectly. Okay, so I mentioned as well a bit earlier that it's quite hard to cheat on the exercise, but it's not impossible. There are, again, two things you should focus on when performing this to make sure you're taking your lats through to their failure points and not going anywhere else to your body. So the way to do this is to make sure you're thinking about driving your elbows down in front of your torso towards your thighs, and to avoid arching through your back and pulling your elbows behind your torso and squeezing your shoulder blades together. Because as soon as you do these things, you'll move tension away from the lats and onto muscles of the upper back, which again is not necessarily bad, but if you wanted upper back, there are so many other exercises that are far better than this type of lat pull down. What exercises might that include? Well, thank you for asking. Absolutely nobody. Those exercises for the upper back might include my other absolute favorite back exercise, the T-bar row. Now, I'm showing it here on a chest-supported machine, which is preferable in my opinion, but this could also be done with your typical landmine attachment or a barbell fixed into the corner of a room or in the corner of a power rack. Now, the first reason why I like the T-bar row, particularly for the chest support, is similar to the lat pull-down, the bracing support that it provides you. Anytime you can provide your body with more external stability, provided that stability doesn't limit your body's ability to move naturally through the movement, the better. That was a lot of ability and movement in one sentence. Anyway, so here, the T-bar row allows us to get into full degrees of rounding through the upper back, which is so important for stretching and stimulating the muscles of the upper back, like the rhomboids and the traps, and to a lesser degree, the rear delts as well. You can of course do this without a chest support, but you'll probably find it hard to get into as extreme a range of motion without losing balance or fatiguing through your lower back and legs as you push close towards failure points. Now, the other reason why I like the T-bar row so much is a little bit nerdier, so if you're not one to really want to nerd out, feel free to just leave your thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and close up this video for the day, and I won't be too offended. But if you do care to know more, let's get into it. If we look at the T-bar row from a side angle, what you'll see here is that the resistance on the machine, that 20 kilo plate, doesn't move straight up in a vertical line. Instead, you see it drawing closer towards the pivot point of the machine. What this means is that as I pull the weight up and reach that peak contraction, the movement will become easier. If you've ever done a T-bar row before, chances are you've felt that, but maybe you haven't really been able to articulate what it is that you're noticing. Contrast that with, say, a barbell row, where as I pull the weight up to the peak contraction, the movement actually becomes harder. Now, why is this important? Because all the muscles in your body, whether it's back, or glutes, or chest, or calves, or biceps, when they reach their peak contraction point, they lose some of their strength and their ability to produce as much force. This means that on most of your typical back exercises, like cable rows, barbell rows, dumbbell rows with a fixed resistance, and even on a lot of other machines, we wind up overloading the position where we're already weak, and we potentially lose out on our ability to continue to push towards failure points. If instead the resistance dropped off a little and it became easier as we reached that peak contraction, we'd arguably be able to push that a little bit farther into the set. Now, does that mean barbell rows and other typical free weight movements are bad? No, not at all, and I still use them plenty in my workouts. However, the reason that I gravitate towards the T-bar row is because it accommodates for that glaring shortcoming and mismatch that exists on nearly all other back exercises, and is arguably a more efficient option. Something that becomes extremely important as you get more advanced and need to maximize every single set and repetition you perform in the gym. If you haven't tried it, I suggest doing so, and of course, you can do this with one arm and a variety of grips depending on what you wanted to stimulate and what you had available as well. So, there you have it guys, the 2 back exercises that I would do if I could only do 2 exercises for the rest of my life. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.